Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.
Welcome to a Coffee with Karen, a cup of positivity with just a sprinkling of woo-woo. So every week my guests will share their story or the topic of conversation will be based either from a mental, a physical or a spiritual perspective. And what we tend to find is quite often most people are doing a combination of all three. So my next guest is Zoe Parsons, and we're going to be talking about, doesn't sound particularly positive. However, it does need to be discussed, and actually the end result is positive. It's what positive outcomes can come out of this when we're dealing with narcissistic and domestic abuses, right? Which is, we can't, push it under the carpet. We've got to address these things. And if there's anybody out there that is suffering, it's to let them know that they don't need to go through it alone and there is help out there for him. So, Zoe, if you could share with the listeners a little bit about yourself, what you do, and share a little bit of your story.
Sure. So thanks for having me. A little bit about me. So I'm a narcissist and domestic abuse counsellor, and how I became that is I was in an abusive relationship myself, and I probably came out of that relationship about 6-7 years ago now. And what I found is when I came out of that relationship, there wasn't really much information or resources or help available. And even understanding what domestic abuse is, I mean, I'd never even heard the word narcissist before. I was just like, what? I was convinced that my relationship was just passionate, that there wasn't, it was cultural differences, it was stress, it was job related, it was work related, it was because we'd had a baby, you just kind of think of all these things. But what happened with me is, so as I said, I was in an abusive relationship, and I didn't know it was abusive because my mum said to me when I was growing up, she was like, if a man ever hits you and gives you a black eye, you must leave. And I was like, well, obviously that I couldn't understand why you would stay in that situation. But with my relationship, I didn't actually get a black eye until 6 months after I left the relationship. And yet the relationship was extremely abusive. And it started gradually, with the emotional abuse, with the gaslighting, with silent treatment, with the putting me down, with making me feel worthless, with just making me feel like I was constantly failing, until it then started, gradually the physical abuse started, where he was pinching me, restraining me, putting me in headlocks. He would, kind of just constantly grabbing me, giving me Chinese burns, pulling my hair, all of this type of stuff, until eventually he was just raping me on a daily basis. Like, he'd pin me on the floor and rape me, and he took all my money. He forced me to take out loans, which he then spent, and I just thought, I'm married, this is a committed relationship, a husband can't rape his wife, it can't be what I think it is. The police would get called occasionally because the neighbors would hear us, and the police would come, and the police would be like, oh, you need to get help, you realize that this isn't right. And I'd be like, yeah, it's not right, but it's fine, I can manage it. Until there was an instance where, by then my little girl must have been about 2.5, and we was arguing, and he was in the kitchen and I was in the bedroom, and he rushed into the bedroom, like pinned me up against the wardrobe, pinned my arms behind my back, started choking me, strangling me, and hitting me in my face. And my little girl was watching this, and I looked over to her on the bed, and I thought, he's going to kill me in front of her. And I thought, I need to do something. I can't. At that point, I thought I deserved everything that he ever did to me, but I knew she deserved better, even though I didn't feel like I deserved better. So I took about a year. I made like a plan to be a little bit safer, to get myself a little bit emotionally stronger. And then I had him removed by police. But then he spent 6 months stalking me, harassing me, hiding in my neighbor's gardens, using our daughter as a means for manipulation, until eventually he broke into my home. He battered down my door with a concrete block, attacked me, headbutted me. I ended up in hospital with 12 stitches in my face. He did get arrested and he's still in prison. He actually got sentenced to 11.5 years for ABH, rape and harassment. So, cut a very, very long story short, that is where I was, but that's not where I am now. And, you know, I left that relationship with external and internal scars, PTSD, nightmares, panic attacks, hypervigilance. I was on antidepressants. I had anxiety disorder. I had battered woman syndrome, like everything. I was a complete, mentally and emotionally, I was broken by it. But, you know, you kind of start to, you have no choice. You have to move forward. You have to live, right? So I was like, what can I do? How can I start healing myself? And the first step really was just educating, and then getting the counseling, and then kind of, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to start talking about my experience. And then I thought, I want to do more. And I trained as a freedom program facilitator and some various things. I worked with some charities in the UK. And I just thought, yeah, I'm going to train. I'm going to become. So I qualified as a coach and counsellor and set up my own practice. And this is what I now do, because I was like, I can't have that horrendous experience define me and be so awful. I thought, I need to do something positive with it. Wow. You know, I need to be able to help people. I need to be able to let people know that, you know, domestic abuse isn't a black eye. Like I said, I didn't get one until 6 months after I was out of the relationship. But my relationship was abusive pretty much from the beginning.
What an incredible story. But you're here, you've come out of it. And and how amazing that you can actually be then an inspiration for others. And I suppose, to knowing that there is help out there, because I suppose that's probably a big thing if you are married.
Yeah.
And it must be quite a difficult, it must be difficult because it's he said, she said, and not everybody, like you say, gets a black eye that they've got something that you can see.
That's right.
You know, the scars that it isn't always about that. So, phenomenal, absolutely. But at least you're safe, and more importantly, your daughter as well, because little eyes and little ears, right?
Totally, exactly. And you know, it takes time and it takes work. But I'm now in a happy, healthy relationship. My little girl, she's obviously a lot older, and she's happy and healthy, and she can see what a positive male role model should be, you know. And I think that's really important, especially, you know, she's the next generation. And I was like, I need to break this cycle, not just for myself and for my daughter, but I'm like, it is possible for other women and men out there. You know, you don't have to put up with this type of abuse just because you're married or you're living with someone or you've got children or financial commitments, whatever it is. If someone is treating you in this way, then you do have options.
Right. And I suppose, like you said, it doesn't start with all of that. It's that drip, drip, drip that you get used to that, and then it escalates and you get used to that. And it's, where do you draw? Do you feel that it was the moment that your daughter, what was the defining moment for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, because by the time like that instance happened that I said where she was looking at me, by then I was so, you become desensitized in a way to your own life. Like he used to say things to me like, oh, if you ever cheat, he had like a big machete and he'd be like, I'm gonna chop you up and I'll put you in the weenie bin. And I was kind of like, yeah, whatever, because I thought I'm not gonna cheat. So I was like, that's not gonna happen. So I kind of accepted that it was all right for him to say that to me, because in my
Wow.
mind it wasn't gonna happen anyway.
Oh,
But exactly, but obviously it's a really outrageous thing to say, and it's a really serious thing to say, because statistically, men who make threats, for every 2 men who make a threat to kill, 1 will follow through on it.
is that what the stats are?
That's what the stats say. So statistically, 2.5 women a week, will get killed by their partner. And with COVID, those numbers have doubled. So it's a really, really serious thing. It's like we talk about COVID and how we're in a pandemic, but domestic abuse is a hidden epidemic going on in people's homes where they are just in fear of their life and not knowing and not understanding and not realizing the severity of what their situation is, you know?
That is, I mean, I knew it was going to be bad because I can remember right at the beginning, people being very worried about the other side, right?
Yeah.
Where, you're talking about this deadly virus, but actually there's a lot of other things going on.
Exactly.
That is the outcome of being locked in. Oh my goodness, no escape. I mean, obviously we're not in that situation at the moment. Let's hope we never have to go back to that. But that's pretty phenomenal. Doubled.
Yes,
the number has doubled since all this began, which is a pretty frightening fact.
Yeah, it's really frightening. And the basis of an abusive relationship is it's a power and control dynamic. So you see, whoever is being the abuser, whether it's a male or a woman, because obviously men, they get abused as well. Statistically, it's 1 in 4. Men, it's 1 in 6. So, and that's only reported statistics. So you have to think that there are lots of people experiencing abuse that aren't reporting it, in as much as the police aren't getting involved. And oftentimes someone would need to be abused, or they experience abuse 39 times before they'll even pick up the phone to report it. So when you think about the stats and what is actually going on in people's homes, it's really, really bad.
And why do you think that is? So even based on your experience, what do you think is the real reason behind it? Is it that people are thinking, oh, that's not big enough, or that wasn't major enough, or it didn't hit me hard enough for me to go to or whatever, Is it because they're thinking, oh, that's, or did you, for instance, feel that this is normal? If this goes on in relationships, what do you think is the it's really not reporting it?
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult. I think, as a victim, you're confused, you're ashamed, you feel guilty, you feel responsible. You don't know what's happening. And obviously there's a whole lot of fear involved. I mean, my ex, he used to press on my arm so much that he would really hurt it, but not enough that he would do this type of thing, but not enough that he would leave bruises. And I would say to him, you've really hurt my arm, why would you do that? And he's like, I haven't done nothing, what are you talking about? And I was like, but it's hurting. And he was like, not me. He was like, can you see a bruise? And I'm like, no. And then I'd be to myself, oh, maybe when someone is staring you in your eyes and gaslighting you, because this is what this form of that we're talking about, form of manipulation is, where someone is denying your reality, when that happens to you enough, you start to lose trust in yourself
In your own.
and in your surroundings, and you find you're just very confused. So your reality of what you think is happening to what is actually happening gets very distorted. And that's just one example of, as someone maybe gaslighting. But I mean, gaslighting can be anything from, they might hide your keys. So, and then while you're looking for your keys, be saying, "Oh, you're crazy. You always lose stuff. What's wrong with you? It's losing your mind." And then you spend ages looking, and then suddenly your keys reappear back where they were originally. And you're like, what on earth happened? But I look there and you're just really confused. So
you start doubting yourself and your own sanity.
And there's no physical abuse involved in that. You haven't been physically injured, but it's highly abusive. It's emotionally abusive.
It starts somewhere, like you say. They're not going to be as obvious as, because obviously at the beginning you would have been a stronger woman, right? You would think, looking back, if he'd done any of those things, I wouldn't have had that. But it must be that slow. I mean, how long for you? How long were you together?
6 years.
6 years. And how long after were you together did you get married?
So we was together a year, and then we married, and then obviously we was married for 6 years. So
right. So how long until the thing started?
Pretty much straight away. So it's weird because when I look back, there were red flags, as you know, when we was dating, but because I didn't know anything about red flags, because I didn't know anything, I was, you kind of justify odd behavior, you kind of think, oh, it's just a one-off, they're stressed, it's because of this, it's because of work, it's because there was a misunderstanding. We all kind of have the belief that everyone deserves a second chance. Not when it's a red flag, you don't, but no one tells you that, you see. So you kind of go through, and then the rest of the time it's amazing, because the thing is, when you're starting an abusive person, a narcissist, or a perpetrator of abuse, they will wear their mask and they will rush you and they will love bomb you, and everything will be really intense, really romantic. It will happen very quickly and you'll just be on cloud nine with it. And then normally what happens is, once you're either living together, engaged, married, or had a baby, that's normally when it switches and the mask comes off and the manipulation will start.
Horrendous. So for those listening that might not, because this word narcissist does seem to, and I would agree, this is definitely, for me, hearing the word is a new-ish word. We didn't really, when I was a kid, nobody talked about a narcissist. So what is your explanation of how would you describe a narcissist?
So a narcissist is a clinical diagnosis, and it's an actual personality disorder. So for someone to be diagnosed as a narcissist, they need to go to see a professional. And there are 9 narcissistic traits. And for someone to be clinically diagnosed, they have to be displaying 5 of the 9 consistently. So we're not talking one-off behaviors here. We're talking a pattern of consistent behavior. So for instance, some of the traits are arrogant, they're grandiose, they have no empathy, they are superior, they're exploitative, they're envious of others. So if you're in a relationship with someone who could only, maybe be displaying 2 or 3 of these traits, they're technically not a narcissist, but their behavior is going to be abusive, and why it's helpful to understand the difference, in as much as it's, if you're in that type of relationship, depending on the abuse and how the perpetrator manifests and displays that abuse, is going to depend on your options for leaving safely, because as I mentioned earlier, there are risk factors. So if someone is threatening to kill you, you can't ignore that, because, as I said, 1 out of 2 threats gets followed through on. And there are indicators in behavior. So if the person you're with is very jealous, very controlling, very obsessive, uses strangulation, intimidation, threats, all of this type of stuff, your risk increases. So it is helpful to understand a certain amount, because what I didn't do was, although I prepared myself emotionally to leave, I didn't know anything about making a safe plan to leave, and informing my neighbors and setting aside money. And so I was just like, I just called the police and had him removed. But that escalated relatively quickly into something pretty bad.
Right. Okay. It was after that.
That's right.
Saying that you actually. So are you saying then that if you had known more prior to that, you would have maybe prepped your escape, as it were?
Definitely.
In a different way, which very possibly would have meant that you wouldn't have been attacked.
Definitely. I mean, the thing is, when you're often in these types of relationships, you get used to being monitored. So, for instance, you have to give your passwords for your social media, your phone, etc., etc. You're constantly being phoned and checked, and maybe you have to do video calls to prove that you are where you are. So when you leave the relationship and that type of behavior still continues, for someone who's left that relationship, that behavior is normal, but actually that behavior is illegal and it's stalking. And often we don't realize that there is help available, and that if you start keeping a record and a log of this and you go to the police, then obviously they can help you. There's like a service in the UK called Paladin, there's a charity, and they deal specially in stalking. So if you are experiencing this type of thing after you've left the relationship, then you can get help. But often these types of behaviors are in the relationship before you leave, so you can start getting the support for yourself to help you prepare, to help you be safe, to make sure that what you're doing is going to minimize your risk.
Wow. And do you feel that, so what I'm taking from what you're sharing there is, like you say, prepping to leave would be maybe informing neighbours or whatever, but would there be an issue, or I can imagine, I'm just thinking how I would possibly, because we don't know how we'd react, but for a lot of it, women could possibly say to their friends or their neighbours, make out that everything's rosy.
Yes.
So then there could be a danger of people, sometimes, again, you never know what's going on behind closed doors, because on the face of it, they might have a lovely relationship because the woman might not want to. I think you said earlier about, you feel shame or guilt or, and so might not want to openly admit to what is actually going on in the household to people. So how would they get over that part of it, or what would you suggest to them?
I think the first step is really identifying to yourself and educating yourself that what you're experiencing is abuse. Like, there's this, I remember when I was preparing, I was like, I knew something wasn't right. And I was like, I was trying to understand what was going on. And I did this quiz. And the quiz came back something like 55 out of 60. And then at the bottom, it said that because my rating was so high, I was at risk of basically being killed. And I was like, what? I was like, no. I didn't believe it. I was like, that can't be right. I was like, it's just him and me, and we're just having an argument. And I was like, no. So I then thought, all right, let me find something else. So I did another one of those types of quizzes, and it came back with a similar result. And I was like, maybe I need to look at this, right? I'm like, maybe someone's trying to tell me something that I don't know. And so I bought a book, I started reading it, I started educating myself so I could understand more of what was happening within my home, because you can't make a move, I mean, you're talking about splitting up your family, you're taking your children, maybe separating from their father or their mother, or you're changing your whole life, maybe making yourself homeless, making them homeless, whatever. It's a huge decision, and you want to make sure that you're doing that informed. You don't want to just be thinking, oh, maybe it's just normal arguments, maybe it's because of cultural difference. Because the thing is, when we're in those types of relationships, we justify what is happening to ourselves in an effort to try and understand and just make our life not as horrendous. So for me, I was like, oh, it's because he was out of work. Oh, it's because he just moved here. Oh, it was because he was trying to get work. Oh, it's because he didn't have friends. Oh, it's because we're different. It's because of et cetera, et cetera. So, but the reality is nothing excuses abusive behavior. And I think this is a really important thing to remember, is someone who abuses, they choose to abuse. They are aware of what they're doing. They know what they're doing. No matter how many times they say sorry, they don't mean it, and they will continue to do it. And it's not because of past trauma. It's not because they don't know. It's not because they're stressed. They don't abuse because of drugs or alcohol. They abuse because they want power and control within that relationship.
Right, you said something quite interesting there. Because I've always thought, well, it's the abused become the abuser, so maybe they've had a terrible life or something's happened to them. But then you just said there that it ain't necessarily so.
No. And the thing is, it's true, an abusive person might have experienced abuse in their childhood, but that lots of people experience abuse in their childhood.
No excuse at all.
And not everyone turns out to be abusive.
No.
It's like we all have a choice as to how we want to deal with that trauma or that event in our life. It's a case of, are we going to do something to heal that part of ourselves, or are we going to project it and just use it to abuse and mistreat other people so that we can feel better about ourselves, but it is an active choice.
Horrendous. So what is the difference? So you have domestic abuse, and what's the difference between that and between a narcissist? What's the difference?
So obviously a narcissist is a clinical diagnosis, and the problem with that is because narcissists generally, they have a grandiose complex. They feel that they're God. They don't feel that they need to be responsible or accountable for anything. They feel that nothing is their fault. It's always going to be the other person. They won't often go to see someone to get diagnosed. You see,
yeah.
So I think statistically, it's like 1 in 8 people is a narcissist. So the stats are quite high on it, but it would be more if more people was diagnosed.
So you're saying that's just out the people that have actually gone to be tested.
Exactly.
I can't imagine any narcissist
No.
actually going and getting tested. Where are these people that are getting tested from? Or is it from people that, they've had to be put into the system? So really, there could be a lot more
That's right.
now.
Which, if you think about the stats I said earlier, say 1 in 4 and 1 in 6 for men, then that. So there is a difference between domestic and narcissistic abuse. So, like I said, someone who's narcissistic is 5 or more of the 9 traits, but you can be in a relationship with someone who would only be diagnosed with maybe 2, 3, 4 of the traits, and that is still going to make them abusive. It's still going to be domestic abuse within your household, perpetrated upon you.
Right. And how would you, so for somebody out there thinking, well, he does that, but he loves me, or he's doing that, but how can you really know? How would you know? What are the real, like you say, red flags, I suppose, if you are in an abusive relationship?
I think the biggest indicators is really going to come down to how that person makes you feel as a person. Because you see, everyone is going to be abusive, but in a slightly different way. So, if you go on my Instagram page, it's like I talk about the tactics of abuse, and that's obviously very general examples of what could be happening within your relationship. But depending on the person, they're going to display those things differently. So it's really going to be how you feel about it. And if you feel confused by your relationship, then that generally is a sign that there's some kind of abusive behavior going on. Because in a healthy relationship, there's communication and there's clarity. We don't feel confused about anything. We know where we stand. We know what the person likes. We know what we like, what they don't like, what we don't like. We're able to communicate it. And we're not afraid to speak. And that's the other thing. If you feel that you can't share your viewpoint, your thoughts, and what's worrying you, or you can't speak up or say no or disagree, then that again would be an indicator that you're in an abusive relationship.
Not right.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think as well that we have a lot of misconceptions about is, everyone, especially with the whole online dating, is people seem to ghost all the time. So the whole ghosting and silent treatment has become something that is acceptable. But the reality is it's not. If anyone is ghosting you, stonewalling you, giving you silent treatment, not ignoring, not responding to your calls and ignoring you, then that is abusive behavior. It's not acceptable.
Normal behavior. It's just not respectable, is it? You expect it in any other kind of relationship, or business relationship, or
exactly
any other kind of relationship. You wouldn't accept it. So why again? But I suppose it's such a difficult thing. If the person's in love with that person before they start showing these signs, it's got to be difficult. So you're saying you don't feel that if somebody is a narcissist, that it's impossible for them to change? They cannot change?
No, they cannot change. So why I say that is because the difference between someone who's narcissistic and someone who's not is narcissism is actually, it's a personality disorder, and it's to do with how the brain has formed from childhood. So it's a way the brain is formed. It's like you could be with someone and they could be promising you that they're going to change. They could be saying, let's go couples therapy. But ultimately, all of that is just manipulation to continue you to stay in that relationship where you're giving them essentially what it is they want.
Right. So for people, if they are, or they feel that they are, and they're scared of what would happen if they do leave, what are the options that are available out there for these women or men? Because yes, it happens both ways.
So, I mean, there are a few things you need to think about. You need to start putting together safety plans. So I've got one of those on my website, so you can go and you can download that. It gives you like a checklist of everything you need to think about while you're preparing to leave and after you've left as well, because obviously after you've left, you need to make sure that you're safe. You need to make sure the children are safe. You need to make sure maybe that your location, your social media, your passwords are changed, whatever it is. There are certain things that, you know, you're going to need to do. I mean, I've heard of people being tracked through the Just Eat app because you share an account, you move and leave, you order a pizza, and they find out your address. So, and it's stuff like that you might not necessarily be thinking about changing, because obviously there's, you know, you're in an emotional state. So it's stuff like that I've got on my checklist that people can go and download. You've got Women's Aid, you've got Refuge, you've got Mankind for Men. So there are charities and support services out there. Obviously, if you are afraid, report it to the police. And you can email me. I've got a support group on Facebook that anyone can come and join, and there's people in there in all different stages of wherever they are. And it's kind of, you want to get yourself a network where you can educate yourself, where you are supported, where you can get advice, you can get emotional support, that you just have a safe space where you can vent and get help. Absolutely. It's really important.
Yeah, I'm sure, having that support network, because I would have thought that in general they would, you know, a lot of these women could feel very alone because
Definitely.
they could have been slowly chipping away at their friends and family network over the years, however many years it's been going on, till that woman or man, right, can feel like they're on their own. So having a support network and like you say, that emotional support. I mean, it's massive, isn't it? So the upside of this is, because obviously this is it's not all doom and gloom. It's not all doom and gloom, just because there are people out there that, I mean, that you just think, why do you not want a happy relationship? Isn't that better than it's just why?
I mean, the thing is, it's because their view of what happy is different to what your view of what happy is. So you see, a healthy person will go into a relationship wanting love, honesty, respect, trust. They'll want to grow with that person, you know, you'll have goals, you'll, you know, have future plans, whatever it is. And it's very team orientated, where an abuser isn't about the team. An abuser is about them, what they can get, how they're going to get it, when they're going to get it. And you basically become a means of supply to them so they can gain everything and anything they want. So it's not about your happiness as a couple, although they might be telling you that. What it is essentially is it's about their happiness as a person. And that is all they care about. So, but because that's not, you know, I mean, if we was dating someone and they said, oh yeah, I want to be with you because I want to drain you of all your emotional, mental, physical, sexual, financial resources, you'd be like, hell no.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So obviously they're not going to come at you like that. It's going to be the mask is going to be on, and they're going to be very nice and charming, and they're going to get to know you, and they're going to get to know your vulnerabilities, and then they're going to mirror you, and they're going to, and then you're going to think, oh, this person is like me. They have the same things. We're so aligned. We want the same future, but it's not.
It's
you
not
see,
real.
And that's often the hard thing to come to accept when you're in this type of relationship is, you are going to grieve, you are going to experience loss, because although they came into the relationship with deception, you didn't.
Right.
You see, and it can be hard to process.
Right, because they've basically fallen in love with a fake.
Yeah,
somebody
exactly.
that that person never actually existed.
Yeah,
So they're going to grieve that loss, but there is no loss because they were never that person.
exactly. It's difficult, and obviously when you layer that with the fact that you love them, you're trauma bonded, you're emotionally confused by everything, it's one of the reasons why it can be so hard. It's not just a case of just leaving.
No.
It's much deeper.
Time, energy,
Yeah.
Emotion. Yeah, there's a lot. So you can see how that this is, I suppose, a lot of this, it is the mental perspective. It's how that person is going to deal with come to terms with all of that, even. So, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So how can you heal from being in an abusive relationship, even though at the time, and I'm sure it must be the most difficult thing in the world, it's difficult for any relationship to come to the end of any relationship, right? But something like this, with dealing with a narcissist, it's just a whole other level, right?
Yes,
of what they've got to deal with. So, what is their starting place, and what can somebody hope for coming out of this? There is light. There is light at the end of the tunnel.
Totally. There's totally light, and you can totally heal. But I think it's important to recognize that, this relationship that you've come out of isn't a normal relationship. It's not just your heart that's broken, it's your spirit. And time alone is not going to be enough. You are going to have to actively do things to help yourself on your healing journey. And you need to be patient with yourself, because it is going to take time. And there are certain things that you can definitely do. So, for instance, the first step I'd say is you definitely need to start educating yourself. So buy some books, download them on your Kindle, follow people like me on Instagram, start helping yourself so that you can become aware, so that you're not so much in this foggy, confused state within this relationship. It's like that doesn't have to be, where you end up. The other thing is you need to get yourself a support network. You need to speak to a professional, so someone like myself. You need to realize that you can't fix them, because often we are made, while we're in that relationship, we are made so responsible for everything. Everything is our fault. And, the reason the relationship doesn't work is because it's our fault. And if only we did this, or we did that, or we cooked a different dinner, or we wore a different outfit, or whatever it is. I mean, the thing is, it's an impossible set of requirements when you're in an abusive relationship, because the rules always change, because you're in a relationship with someone who doesn't want peace and harmony. You're in a relationship with someone who wants emotional and physical supply from you. They feed off. I call them, abusive people. They're a bit like energy vampires. It's why we come out of those relationships drained, exhausted, looking 10 years older and just feeling like we could sleep for a year, But I've done it. I was in a really awful place, and I'm now out and healed. I did the work. I'm now, as I said, in a happy, healthy relationship, and I now help men and women get to the same place that I'm in, because I know it's possible. And there are hundreds. All you need to do is just go on Instagram or Facebook, and you'll see many, many inspirational stories of people that have experienced these types of relationships, but are now in a happy, healthy place.
Thriving.
Yeah.
Thriving. So for the listeners out there, because if wherever you're watching or listening this to, there will be links to all of Zoe's either social media or website. But for those who are just listening on Mintwave, so what if they want to come and find you? What is your website first of all?
So my website is www.selfloveafterabuse.com, and basically you can find me on social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, Twitter, as Self-Love After Abuse. So
Self-Love After Abuse.
Yeah.
And that is it. I mean, I think that just really sums it up, I suppose, in a way, because as you say, it wouldn't have happened straight off. So it would have been a drip.
Yeah.
They've been sucking the life out of you for however long you've been in that abusive relationship, and it would have started slow and then built up. So yeah, you could feel like just absolutely exhausted. But again, a little bit of self-care, which I think everybody. I think not being horrible, but I think a lot of women, especially as a mother, so not just as a partner, but as a mother. It's almost like they come last. You've got to deal with everybody else first. So maybe, the first thing you need to do coming out of that is a little bit of self-care. There's nothing wrong in that, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, I completely agree with you. And the thing is, we can show ourselves self-love and self-care in so many different ways. It's not just about a face mask or a bubble bath. It's, it's about understanding what your needs are. It's about being able to set boundaries. It's about giving yourself, even if it's 1 hour a week where you just go to the gym or you do something that you enjoy, maybe it's getting your hair done, your nails done, whatever, but it's making sure that you're doing something where you are showing yourself that you have value.
Right. And that you don't feel guilty, because I think so many women do feel guilty when they are giving themselves self-care. That in some way, I mean, I'm sure that quite often the guys will go off and do what they want whenever they want, but I do think that there's a lot of women out there that just feel guilt that how dare they should be spending time doing stuff. God forbid, doing something for themselves.
That's right, but you need to be emotionally topped up if you're going to be giving out. And as parents, wives, mothers, whatever, we're constantly giving out, aren't we? We're giving out of our time, our energy, our, wisdom, our emotional resource. And all of that is finite. And it's like, if you don't take the time to make sure you're replenishing yourself in these different areas, you will end up not being able to give to your family or your work or whoever what it is you want to, purely because you've run yourself dry.
Sure, you can't give from an empty cup, as they say.
No,
so it starts with you first, which could be, I mean, how many different things can we think of? Like you say, it doesn't have to be getting your hair done, the nails done. I mean, just 10 minutes of peace, just 10-minute meditation. Start with that. One little bit of quiet time for you. Although you did say, you did mention earlier that might not be the right thing for somebody coming out of that. Did you say that?
So no. Well, I mean, it's going to depend on how you are with your emotional state, because obviously when you've come out of an abusive relationship, you're adrenaline, cortisol, your stress hormones, you're very much in fight or flight. So, sometimes doing breathing exercises or sitting calm can be too overwhelming.
Might be too much. So that might not be the best advice, actually. So I'm going to take that back. That would be my instant. But I then just suddenly remembered you mentioned that might not be the right thing for somebody. And that makes a lot of sense. In the beginning, they might not be in that, they're not in a good place, right?
No,
So
because
somebody like that being in the quiet, their fears and anxiety might actually rise, as opposed to having obviously the opposite effect, which we're thinking of. So then for somebody that's in that state, so that wouldn't be for them at that time, once they're going through the healing process, for somebody who is, so what would you say would be the best way of a little bit of self-care to help them right at the beginning part?
I think probably the most effective way of self-care that you can do for yourself is to start journaling. You need, if you're not able to speak with a professional for whatever reason, or even if you are able to speak with a professional, then I still think you should journal. That journaling needs to be your safe space where you're able to put down how you're feeling, you're able to write about what's happened, you're able to maybe include some gratitude journaling. So at the end of the day, before you go to bed, you write down 3 things that you're grateful for. So you're at least ending the day on a positive note.
Wow.
And the power of physically writing, don't mean typing in your phone, because what it does is the physical writing does something, releases different things in your brain, which helps you process things differently than just typing away. So I would recommend getting a good old-fashioned book and a pen. And
do you remember those things? It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, you're so right. There is so much proof out there, so much research out there that something magical happens when you put pen to paper. There's more neurons. There's more.
That's right.
Yeah, it's just so easy, isn't it? With all these apps and the phone and then this and then that. But yeah, old-fashioned way, pen to paper. I don't know whether it's something about the time. I don't know whether it's to do with it takes a bit longer as you're doing the thing, you're thinking about the work. There's just something that's going on. We know that there's something more that's going on than just clicking the alphabet on a keypad that is joining the dots, right?
Definitely.
So journaling. And would you recommend first thing in the morning? What's, like you said, something about last thing that matters, right? Gratitude, does it matter first thing in the morning?
I think it's going to depend on where you are in your healing journey, what it is you're trying to focus on. So for instance, if you're trying to understand and break down gaslighting or trauma bond, then what you're going to want to focus on is you're going to want to write down the events of what's happened in your relationship, so that you start focusing on the reality of that instead of the false hope and the false promises and everything else that's kind of kept you stuck in that relationship. So, but if you're, maybe you've already done that and you feel that you want to do something to build your self-esteem and your self-confidence, so you might want to start doing some kind of affirmation, or maybe you want to write down in the morning 3 compliments about yourself that you give yourself, to kind of reaffirm how you're feeling and make yourself more positive about yourself.
You are worthy. Nobody deserves to be in any kind of abusive in any way, whether is from a narcissist or a bog standard domestic abuser, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, essentially, abuse is abuse, and to a certain extent, it's helpful to understand the difference, especially when we hear the term narcissist all the time. It's kind of a bit of a buzzword. I think everyone is throwing it around. It's like if your
sure.
partner's forgotten to take rubbish out or hasn't cooked your dinner, they're a narcissist. Or they've been a bit selfish with something, they're a narcissist. And that's not what a narcissist is. You know, a narcissist is someone with a personality disorder, and it's very serious.
Right. So
You know,
so it is all about, I suppose, acknowledging which one, because as you said, then there might be a different way of dealing with
exactly.
the preparation to leave. I mean, it's terrible, isn't it, to think that you've got to prepare to leave rather than just leaving. Honestly, so anybody who's out there, I mean, you know, I try and joke about it, not to put down anybody who's going through it, but to give light to the situation. But for anybody who does feel that they are in that situation, they are afraid, then just to let you know that there is help out there. So Zoe, how do you help? What kind of things then do you do? Do you offer just sort of one-to-one counselling sessions? Do you offer any kind of packages? How is it that you work?
Yes, so I offer one-to-one counselling sessions. You can offer them in 30-minute or 60-minute sessions, because I want to make what I offer accessible and available. You know, everything is online, it's all virtual, so it doesn't matter where you are. You don't need to worry about, you know, traveling. If you need privacy, you can sit in your car and do it. I want to make sure that I'm here to help people. I run group coaching sessions where people come together for 6 weeks at a time, and they can obviously work together as a unit, and you get a nice little community feel with that, and you can work through the steps and educate yourself. So that's always an option. And the other thing that I offer is I'm a Mackenzie friend. So in the UK, if you're representing yourself at family court because you can't afford a solicitor and you're not able to get legal aid, you can have what's called a Mackenzie friend, and that is someone who can help you with the legal paperwork and can support you throughout that whole process. So because I've got a child with mine, it's something I've had to do. I've had to go through family court and get an array of different orders, and I've had to represent myself. So I qualified, and I thought I'm going to start offering this, because a lot of my clients, they are in family court, and it's not just the legal aspect, it's also the emotional aspect, because you need to be emotionally prepared and ready, because essentially it's like you're going to be going to war.
Yeah. Awful. So there you go. I suppose all this is really talking about making sure that you realizing that you don't have to do this alone.
Totally.
So reach out. So Zoe has a support network. There are going to be other people that totally understand what you're going through. You don't have to do it alone. You're going to get loads of advice. So reach out to Zoe, whether that's on Facebook, on Insta, your website, and get the help that you need. Get the help that you need. So,
definitely.
Thank you so much for your time, Zoe. I mean, your story is quite extraordinary, and I'm so very glad that you are finally out of it and and what a position to be in as well. It's interesting that pretty much every coach that I speak to, it's something, you know, if you've overcome something, then it's just going to be in you to have this desire to then go on to help others, because you've been in their position. It's very difficult for people if they haven't been to even comprehend half of that stuff, right? So to speak to somebody that totally understands where you're at right now, and that there is help out there. So thank you so much for your time, Zoe.
Thank you for having me. It's been good chatting with you today.
Well, it's just nice to know that there is, you know, that sounds like, we're not talking about positive stuff, but it's real life. It's life that's going on out there, and people do need help. So it's to let them know that there is help available. So thank you so much. For the rest of the listeners, I will be back next week with a coffee with Karen.
Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.